The Spotlight brought to you by Beacon Plumbing.
Good evening and welcome to the Spotlight. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm David Rose. And we begin with a story tonight that has garnered attention all over the country. The Tacoma police officers who arrested Manny Ellis the night he died are turning in their badges and walking away. Each of the three men are getting a $500,000 payout in exchange for voluntarily resigning from the department. The Tacoma Police Union weighed in, saying that labeling these officers as criminals when they were exonerated was a reckless political witch hunt. They went on to say Tacoma communities cannot heal if they were misled from the beginning by political grandstanding, and now is the time for communities to build upon truth and move forward. As the Spotlight's A.J. Janavel explains, other than one of the officers using profanity during the arrest, the Tacoma Police Department found no other policies were violated.
Shut the blank up, man. This use of profanity is the only violation Tacoma Police found from the March 2020 night Manny Ellis died. Because of this finding, the department issued a written reprimand to Matthew Collins. Despite all three officers remaining in good standing with the Tacoma Police Department following the internal affairs investigation, Matthew Collins, Timothy Rankin, and Christopher Burbank voluntarily chose to leave the Tacoma Police Department. Documents say there is mutual benefits for the former officers and the city to part ways. And with their departures, Tacoma is paying out $500,000 to each of the former officers. That money is on top of the salary each officer earned while on paid administrative leave since 2020. The Tacoma Action Collective, an activist group in the city who supported the Ellis family, released a statement reading in part, TPD, the city of Tacoma, is so afraid of being sued by three cops that they would rather pay them over $1 million and simply let them resign than to fire them. We have no trust in this department. We didn't in 2020, and we don't in 2024. The Tacoma Police Department would not speak on camera or provide any further comments regarding the decision. But Chief Avery Moore, who was not with the department when the incident originally happened, released a statement reading in part, I acknowledge the detrimental impact of policing on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC communities, extending both a personal and collective apology. My awareness of the historical context of policing includes acts of oppression, abuse, and dehumanization, all carried out under the color of law.
That was the Spotlight's A.J. Janavel. We reached out to all of the attorneys representing the former officers. The only one who provided a statement was the attorney for Collins, who said he just wants his family to have the ability to move forward. Tonight, a local fire department needs your help. They say somebody broke into their fire engine, stealing thousands of dollars in life-saving equipment in broad daylight. It happened while several Browns Point firefighters were out grocery shopping on Monday. Fox 13's Alejandro Guzman spoke to some of the crew, and this is impacting their ability to do their jobs.
The Browns Point Fire Department is in shock. They say this was a very brazen act. Those thieves got away with more than $15,000 worth of equipment, which is a huge setback for this very small department, which is mostly run by volunteers.
Dedicating yourself to be here for this community and take care of everybody, that's what we do.
For some, this is a selfless calling.
Release this chain break here.
For others, it's a second chance to serve.
I was retired after a traumatic brain injury. It's helped me find an outlet for that service.
These men and women don't just run into fires. They're busting down doors and pulling people out of car wrecks, saving lives.
It's been a long day. Our chainsaw and our K-12 were both taken. Incredibly frustrating that someone would value their own whatever it is over the lives of other people.
He says their engine was ransacked by two men while his crew stopped at this QFC near 509.
It's frustrating to put as much of your time and life into this and see people just come and just steal.
A customer stopped to alert them just as they were starting their shopping trip Monday afternoon.
I kind of stood there just dumbstruck that anybody was brazen enough to go and remove those items in broad daylight. It will not hold up to as much torque.
Volunteer firefighter Alondra Ward says she sprinted towards the loading dock. where they usually park the fire truck, and caught a glimpse of their equipment in a white pickup with a U-Haul trailer in tow.
It's really hard to understand how selfish some people can be when I'm here trying to be as selfless as possible.
The thieves stole their extrication tools, saws, basic life-saving equipment including thermometers, oxygen tanks, lights, and axes.
Really difficult to be able to continue to do our jobs when we just don't have the equipment to do it. It's not safe for us, it's not safe for our patients.
The lieutenant says it could be anywhere from a few weeks to 2 months to replace some of their tools. Their second engine can now only fight fires. While they have replaced some of their tools, it comes at a cost.
We did not budget for this, and we're gonna suffer in other ways because of it.
While they fear being targeted again, it's not slowing them down.
We're also going to show up, even if we don't have every single tool we need. We're still here. We're still going to come when the call comes in.
The theft has already been reported to Tacoma Police, but so far no one has been arrested. They're urging anyone who may have seen anything or knows anything about these tools to report it to police and, of course, call them.
Cash for your old cell phone. That's the offer of an international e-waste company. But is the promise of an instant payout more enticing to criminals or consumers? Stolen phones are popping up in the company's self-serve drop-off bins across the Sound. And as the Spotlight's Matthew Smith found out, while the thieves walk off with cash, the victims are left trying to clean up the mess.
It happens in a matter of seconds. Literally seconds. The FBI says a whopping 133 cell phones are stolen every minute. As we live our lives talking, texting, tweeting, companies are making it easy to recycle our old phones to pay for the next, but some even advertise fast cash.
Instead of turning into more clutter in a drawer or toxic waste in the landfill, these phones are turning into cash instantly.
The guts of your phone have real value. To the naked eye, it's not much, but inside your device, there's a small treasure trove of precious metals. To avoid waste, companies incentivize recycling with cold hard cash.
They're incentivizing people to commit crimes.
This is Lindsay. She was riding a bus when someone snatched her phone. It took hours of searching. It wasn't until the next day that her Find My Phone app led her to Cap Hill, where a homeless man told her it was likely inside that box at a nearby store. Which led her here, where she reopened her Find My Phone app.
I go into QFC and I'm looking at all my devices, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet. 10 feet, and then all of a sudden there's this big box machine that's like Eco ATM, turning cell phones for cash on the spot.
Lindsay would eventually call police, who would get Eco ATM to remotely open the kiosk. Inside, they dug through countless phones, eventually finding her stolen device. Police in Seattle, Everett, Tacoma, and Puyallup all tell me they've dealt with Eco ATM and stolen phones. One department even calling them a great partner for helping get phones back. Lindsay and other victims say the company is part of the problem.
Like I said, very well masked, and what is, in my opinion, a stolen goods trafficking ring, essentially.
Eco ATM says they go to great lengths to avoid buying stolen goods. They do what's called a live verification. Now, if you're selling a phone, a real person is monitoring and approving a transaction in real time, verifying that state-issued ID and getting a picture of the seller. They also use a third-party service called CheckMend. Think of it as Carfax for phones. They gather records from cell carriers, police, the FBI, and more to detect if a phone is stolen. Eco ATM says, quote, if the device does not pass CheckMend's background check, the Eco ATM kiosk will reject the transaction. So we put their safeguards to the test. I marked multiple phones as lost, then used online websites to even list them as stolen. Then I ran the devices through CheckMend to see whether my work landed on their radar.
It says the legal title of an item matching your search term and category is in doubt. We recommend you do not purchase.
Yet hours later, Eco ATM offered cash for that exact phone. And again, even 15 days later, meaning it wasn't an issue with the system keeping up to date. Now, it is worth noting.
First, I'll check your ID.
Their verification process was hard to beat. Using a different ID, masks, and sunglasses, multiple attempts to trick the machine failed. If I wanted to sell that stolen phone, I was going to have to put my name and my face on camera. A deterrent, though one criminals have clearly ignored. Old phones, all good. Cracked screen, no worries. No passcode, you can still pass go. Heck, you may even collect 200. You see, age and condition doesn't matter, but the more modern, the more money. And if you have the passcode to get in, you can grab a major payday. But even a stolen, locked phone like Lindsay's could pull a quick and easy 85 bucks. That's according to EcoATM's own website's estimate. EcoATM took days to respond, and once they did, they disputed our findings. Despite saying they used checkmen to double-check phones, they state that checkmen tapped into the GSMA database and confirmed that neither device was reported as stolen. Long story short, checkmen shows it was stolen, but EcoATM states they didn't find a police report, so they purchased the phone anyways. Victims of phone theft question whether this business model is saving anyone.
While at its core, the business model isn't necessarily a bad thing, it shouldn't be built around those extreme incentives that do target people.
So here's where I typically tell you how to protect yourself. The issue here, there's only so much you can do. Now, I would stress that you mark your phone as lost as soon as you suspect it's stolen. If it ends up in one of these kiosks, they can't unlock it without your help. That means they will have to contact you. Though when we did it, it did take several days. We never heard back on our phones that we marked as stolen. Also, file a police report. Without one, you will not get far.
Parents in the Bethel School District are on high alert after multiple reports of a man who is chasing students early in the morning as they head to school. According to police, a student at Spanaway Middle School noticed the man chasing him on the morning of January 10th. When the student got to the school, the man turned around and left. A similar incident was then reported at Bethel High School the next day when a man jumped out of the bushes and tried to grab a student around her waist. She was able to get away. Then a few days later at Liberty Middle School, a student noticed a man in dark clothes walking fast to try to catch up to him. That student was able to run home to safety. Now we're hearing from Sergeant Darren Moss with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department about some of the details of these cases.
He hasn't touched anybody, he's not saying anything, but he's following, chasing, in one instance trying to grab children, middle school age children. So we want the public to be aware of this because we are concerned that this person may be trying to abduct a child. Again, he has not made contact with anybody, but we are putting this out so people are aware.
Sergeant Moss says there is still no video or photos of the suspect at this point, and since the incidents happened, he said some parents have been going to the bus stops to watch their kids to make sure they're safe, but that's making some of the other kids feel creeped out. So if you want to get involved, contact the school and ask them what you can do to help. Well, the mother of a man killed in a hit and run in Pacific is preparing to hold a celebration of life to honor his memory. Now Pacific Police are asking for the public's help to identify the driver and find the SUV that hit 59-year-old Dal Groshong in a crosswalk less than a block away from his home. It was all caught on camera. Take a look. That's Dal in the crosswalk on September 10th. You see a silver or gray Mitsubishi Outlander go up on the curb and hit him. A second later, you see the SUV side mirror bouncing on the ground. Dal was hit near the Jack in the Box in the 400 block of Ellingson Road. He was rushed to Harborview, where he hung on until he finally died on December 11th from multiple blunt force injuries. The driver that hit him is now wanted for vehicular homicide and felony hit and run. You can tell from the video that Dal had difficulty walking. His mom says that's because he was injured in another hit and run back in 1985 when a car crashed into his motorcycle. He was paralyzed for a while and had to learn to walk all over again. His mom has added $1,500 to the $1,000 Crime Stoppers reward. If you can help Pacific Police find the driver, you'll be paid $2,500 in cash. Detectives say the Mitsubishi Outlander would have a damaged windshield and significant front end damage. So if you know who drives it, maybe you worked on it to repair it, or you have any information on where to find it, please submit an anonymous tip by calling 1-800-222-TIPS or text the information through the P3 Tips app on your cell phone. A proposed state bill could punish people accused of stealthing. By definition, stealthing is the act of removing or tampering with a condom or other device during sex without consent.
3 years ago, I was stealthed by a man who I consented to have protected sex with, meaning only after explicitly requiring a condom. After, I was shocked to see the condom had been removed during the act. I did not consent to unprotected sex, and I felt deeply violated.
Supporters of the stealthing bill speaking in front of lawmakers in a public hearing in Olympia.
In the weeks that followed, I experienced deep anxiety about unwanted pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. I missed work to see my doctor for testing.
Representative Liz Berry is sponsoring House Bill 1958.
But I had a friend come to me and tell me about her experience being stealthed. I knew nothing about it. I maybe heard a few things anecdotally, and I went and researched and realized how prevalent this issue was.
Berry wants to empower victims to go after assailants, not in a criminal hearing, but in civil court.
Statutory fine and damages per violation, and also survivors can seek attorney's fees and costs as well if they're prevailing.
But how exactly would an alleged victim prove they were stealthed?
Unfortunately, this is just he said, she said, or they said, or we don't have any proof because the proof has already been disposed of.
You're right. A lot of it does come down to he said, she said, but that also is recognized under Washington statutes as a valid form of testimony. Credibility is very key.
But so is awareness, according to supporters who say stealthing is another form of sexual violence.
Stealthing is akin to rape. And as I looked into it, I realized that so many people in the world, or in my world, have been touched by this practice. And I think this bill will give them a voice.
How is it akin to rape?
Well, you give consent to have sex with a sexually protective device. And if that is tampered with or removed intentionally, you're not consenting to that behavior.
WSDOT is placing boulders to keep the homeless at bay. Crews are strategically placing these obstructions along state highways to prevent people from sleeping or setting up tents. The Spotlight's Lauren Donovan brings us the story from Olympia.
It's kind of like a strip of land, and it's just rocks everywhere.
Once the tents come down and the cleanup crews move through, these move in so the campers don't come back.
Pretty decent sized rocks, and they're spaced so that things can't be put in between them easily at all.
The state just dropped nearly $700K on rocks.
Oh, jeez. That's a lot of money for rocks.
That's right. Taxpayer dollars are buying boulders, hundreds of them. Drive through I-5 in Thurston County, you'll spy them all over the place in Olympia. The largest block is near the Slater-Kinney exit.
According to WSDOT, at one point in time, 130 people lived here. All accepted services and nearly all are still in housing. But if anyone wants to camp at this spot moving forward, they'll see that is no longer an option.
I think it was great as far as helping the homeless and getting them into shelters.
This hostile architecture tactic is not new. We've seen it in Los Angeles, Portland, and Spokane. Back in 2015, the city of Tacoma took heat for stacking boulders along roadsides for the same reason.
There's a lot more we can do for the homeless. I mean, that money could have been spent in better ways.
Locals we spoke with are conflicted. Is this the most humane solution?
I'm pro-rock, yeah. We don't want people walking out into the highway. That's a disaster.
Alexandria says this wooded stretch of I-5 was once really chaotic.
It looked like a really nasty campsite. Tents next to tents next to tents, and people everywhere.
While the boulders send an undeniable message to the homeless that they're no longer welcome here, WSDOT emphasized it has not stopped caring. In a statement, the agency says it remains committed to its encampment resolution program, which successfully relocated 836 people last year. But that's still only a fraction of the homeless population living near the highways. Plus, it took months and cost millions. It remains to be seen whether lawmakers this session will set aside more funding.
Good luck. Good luck. Hope it works out for them.
In his budget proposal, Governor Inslee is asking for another $100 million for camp removal. Now that's on top of the more than $140 million already spent on the project. So how much of that might be spent on boulders? WSDOT says the rocks are placed on a case-by-case basis, so it really depends. Caught on camera, Seattle officers turned to the Terminator to keep a suspected DUI driver off the streets. You can see the officers placing the Terminator in front of the rear passenger tire of the suspect's car. A Terminator is a less lethal tool that's basically a tire deflation device. SPD says officers on patrol spotted the suspect parked at a gas station and could clearly see drug paraphernalia scattered throughout the car. The driver appeared to be going in and out of consciousness, a common indicator of opioid use. The device was set up to prevent the driver from fleeing. Then they knocked on his door.
Don't go nowhere. Don't go anywhere. Seattle Police, don't drive away. Your tire's gonna go flat.
The driver drove off with a flat tire. The officers were able to catch up with the suspect and gave commands to the driver to exit the vehicle. But the driver and some other people in the car got out and started running.
Seattle Police, you're under arrest. I'm gonna catch you, dude.
The officers were able to arrest the suspected driver. They recovered narcotics and drug paraphernalia from the car, which actually turned out to be stolen. The suspect was booked for eluding police, possession of a stolen motor vehicle, and driving under the influence. The other 2 passengers were identified and released from the scene. January is National Blood Donor Month, and right now there is a critical need in the Pacific Northwest, especially for type O donors. This graphic from BloodWorks Northwest shows the high need for donors through next month. They're holding pop-ups all over Western Washington. And since I happen to have type O positive blood, I donated on Thursday at a pop-up held at the Kirkland City Hall. Retired Sergeant Frank Campson from SPD also joined me. He's challenging all law enforcement to give in support of the nonprofit Washington State Concerns of Police Survivors. Just go to bloodworksnorthwest.org to make an appointment now through January 31st. And when you do, use code HERO when you check in. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next week, be smart, stay safe.